So hi, everybody. Welcome. This is Steve Cady at Bowling Green State University. I'm a professor of management and organization development and director of our doctorate in organization development and change. And this is our symposia series where we are also discussing all things change. And today we have one of our doctoral students, Nila Jennings, and Nila is going to be speaking about a very hot topic that's related to her passion, her area of research and writing, and her thought leadership. And so Nila, I'm really glad that you're a part of this. Our doctoral program, for those of you that don't know, our doctoral program is coming into its fourth year. It's a professional doctorate in organization development and change. And we focus on people developing their thought leadership, their professional brand, if you will, around that thing that they are most passionate about, the difference they want to make in the world, the contribution, the legacy they want to leave. And our program really helps people build the thought leadership skills so they can achieve professional joy. And that is really the opportunity to do what you want, where you want, with whom you want, making the living you want, making that difference that matters. And we really are very blessed with the program I am to be working with such great students from around the world. And we have a great cohort coming in this fall. And so our cohort 4 is looking great. And our average age is, around 50 years old. We have people that are in the 30s all the way up to 60s and beyond. And we have people that are in different stages of their careers, 35, 30 years of experience, and just a really amazing, diverse group of people from different industries and perspectives. So it's a real blessing for me to be in this community. It energizes me. And I'm grateful for you, Nila, for being willing to step up and being a role model, because you're already putting content out there, getting yourself published, making a difference that matters. And it's really exciting to have you share with us today. So I'll turn it over to you for your talk today.
Thank you, Steve. And before I begin, I want to just say that most of you who are here today are students in the DODC program or coming into it. One of my clients, Bob Murr, is here, and I'm going to ask you, Bob, to introduce yourself in just a moment. But I do want to say that my experience in this program has just been phenomenal. You have to go through a lot of education to get to the point where you can even enter into a doctorate program. And this has been by far, this DODC program, by far the most excellent educational program I have ever been in. It has been life-changing for me. And my hope is that in the ways in which I have been changed and the knowledge that I have gained and the professional role models that I have been around will be something that I can in turn pass on to my clients and be of greater benefit to them. So just a plug in there for that DODC program, if you know anyone who's thinking about it or who could benefit from it, I highly, highly recommend it. So, Bob, before we start, I would like for you to introduce yourself to the rest of my colleagues who are here today. Bob and I worked together for several years in one of my very, very favorite clients. So if you'll just introduce yourself, and then we'll jump right into the program.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Bob Murr, and I am Vice President of Operations for a engineering services firm named KCI. And we service the nuclear industry, providing engineering services for operating nuclear power plants throughout the country and internationally as well. I have the privilege of learning from Nila for several years. I cherished that. I missed it. And so when I was given another opportunity to learn from Nila and you all, I jumped on it. So I'm pleased to be with you today, and thank you, Nila, for reaching out and giving me the opportunity.
Well, Bob, thank you so much. It was really my privilege and my honor to spend time with you over the years. All right, so let's jump into when professional identity can derail a career, and OD's role in smoothing out that process. But I would like to say it's not just OD's role, and you'll see later on in the presentation, but management and leadership plays a very key role in this. So why does this even matter? Why does professional identity matter? And if you don't know what professional identity is, we'll talk about that in a minute. But it matters because of the impact that promotions, job redesign, even second careers can have on both the individual and the organization if these promotions, job redesigns, or second careers are in conflict and do not align well with the person's professional identity. So let's take a look and see what we can learn from this. So by the end of the session today, you're going to walk away with a few things. One, you're going to be able to explain what professional identity is and why it can be both an asset and a liability. You're going to design a short-term micro, which is the personal, psychological, social, so this is the employee side, intervention, and also a macro, which is the organizational structural intervention and processes. And then we're going to come together after you do that, and you're going to explain why your intervention and processes will be effective, how they will be implemented, and when and how you will measure and evaluate their effectiveness. Now, I do want to say up front that you will only have 15 minutes to do this. So in real life, you could never do this in 15 minutes. But we're going to have these breakout sessions just so that you will be able to think more deeply about what needs to happen to help employees as they are moving into different roles. So from a professional standpoint, I want you to think for a minute, and if you would just put it into the chat, your answer to this, and Matt, maybe you can just call out some of the answers. From a professional standpoint, answer this question, or fill in this blank, I should say. And I don't want you to spend a lot of time thinking about it. I just want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind when you answer this question, I am. So just put it into the chat, and Matt, if you'll just tell us what's coming up in the chat. And again, this is from a professional standpoint. I am.
Okay, we see I am an educator. I am a connector. I am an HR professional. I am retired. I am empowered.
Okay, interesting. So some good professional identities there. And I hope that the work that you do on an everyday basis is in alignment with who you say that you are from a professional standpoint. If that's the case, then you're very fortunate because many people do not have that joy, that professional joy that Steve talks about, because they are in a role that conflicts with their professional identity. So let's talk about what professional identity is. It is a psychological representation of oneself, and it is an outcome of formal and experiential learning and socialization, which results in specialization in a specific professional occupation. It is characterized by attitudes and behaviors, specifically thinking, behaving, feeling, and identifying with the profession. So some of the characteristics of professional identity, this is developed over time through cognitive, psychological, and socialization processes. So we think about this in terms of a doctor, an engineer, a teacher. So you go to college, you learn, you choose a profession, you become educated in that. You begin over time, you're hanging out with other doctors, other teachers, other engineers, and so forth. You're beginning to think and feel and act as though you are an individual in that profession. And that takes place over time. Professional identity is relatively constant because it becomes an unchanging set of values, attitudes, beliefs, and norms. You're so inculcated into this community of professionals that it becomes very difficult to break that set of values, attitudes, and beliefs. It is much stronger with occupational professionals because of one, continuing education, professional certifications, and the need for ascribing to professional codes of conduct and ethics. So there's a lot that goes into building this professional identity. Now, it is an asset because it enables specialization, expertise, and even stability in a job. And if you think about it, Bob talks about how he is a VP of operations for an engineering company that provides services to the nuclear power industry. Well, we certainly want those engineers to be specialized. We want them to identify with being nuclear power engineers. It's very safe for us if they are. We want the same thing with their doctors and with their school teachers. So it is an extreme asset, and it's something that people aspire to, and we applaud them for it. The difficulty comes in when they are promoted to new positions, to new roles, or you have to do a job redesign, or they enter a second career, and these new roles are in conflict with their professional identity. And in that case, what happens is there are boundaries and barriers that have to be overcome. And we all know that change is challenging, and it is particularly challenging when we are looking at professional identity. So my research journey into the information I'm going to share with you today began about 2 years ago when I started to research how can I, because I worked with companies that provide nuclear power, how can I help those engineers be better at their role when they are promoted to management and leadership roles? And I saw a real struggle in many different organizations with that. And so I began to research and learn more about it so that I could be more helpful. And that led to the publication of an article that I wrote in OD Review. This was the winter 2021 edition. If anybody would like a copy of that, just email me and I'll be happy to send you a copy. And I began to look at this and learn about why values, attitudes, and interests matter. And all three of those matter significantly. We won't get into that today because there just isn't enough time, but it's all outlined in the article. So if you want a copy of it, I'm very, very happy to share that with you. So I want to introduce you to a client of mine who became Spaghettified. So you see here on the screen is a picture of a star that is being pulled into a black hole. This is actually picture that the Hubble telescope took a few years ago. I think it's pretty fascinating. I actually have a video of it, but I didn't want to take up the time to show you. But you can find it if it interests you. And what jumped out at me at this picture is this is what happens so many times when we promote people to management and leadership roles who have a professional identity that is not in leadership or management. And often what happens, and Bob can attest to this, he has seen it in his organization, that those engineers, for instance, who are the stars, they are experts in what they do, are often the ones who get promoted to management and leadership positions. But the skills that are needed in a technical role don't always and almost never really transfer over into management and leadership. So I personally view management and leadership as a hard science that those who are entering into that field really need to be well trained in order to perform well. That doesn't happen right now. Maybe in the future it will. But what I ended up seeing is, take for instance, because Bob's on the phone, I can use his industry as an example. You have a star engineer. We call them high potentials, or maybe somebody that's been in the field a long time. They get promoted to an engineer, to a leadership or management position. So now their feet are over here in this new role of leadership and management, but their head is still over with their professional identity in engineering. And so they get pulled in both directions, and like a star getting pulled into a black hole, I also call it the black hole of roles, they become spaghettified. And it's a very sad situation. So I worked with a woman that this very thing happened to, and she was considered a real expert, a subject matter expert, well respected for the work that she did, the technical work that she did. When she was promoted to a leadership position, she just failed miserably, and she lacked training. So the organizational structures were not put in place to support her promotion. And she also lacked the personal development that she needed in order to do well in this new role. And she was spaghettified. She went back and forth between the two. So in order to prevent that from happening, I have developed a 12-step program that I have proposed in my paper that will help organizations better prepare people for leadership and management positions. Now, this is a very long-term proposal. It starts with the planning phase of developing and promoting a dual career ladder all the way down to going through the training, benchmarking jobs, and then doing the things that I'm going to show you, taking the steps to help both from an organizational standpoint and from a personal standpoint to help people make a transition. We won't spend a lot of time on this. This is in the article that I wrote, because it is a long-term process, and many of you may be facing the need to help somebody right now. So that's what I'm going to jump into for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll break out into the groups. So these are some steps that you can take right now if you are a manager or OD professional and you have someone that has been promoted or a job redesign or someone who's in a second career. It is a 5-step process. It is both a micro and macro perspective, and it will help you to help the organization and the individual transition into a new, or in many cases, a hybrid professional identity. So they may need to be able to do both their old work and do some new work too. So it could be a combination. The employees must act as agents of change. So the person who is in this new or hybrid role must take some steps, and OD and management's role is important in helping them do that. And then there's organizational work that needs to be done. So let's go through that 5-step process. So step number 1, for the employee, there needs to be some belief work and reframing done. And you might want to take some notes here so that when you get into the breakout session, you will have some material that will help you. But if you take notes now, it might help you speed through that process that we're going to do. So the belief work and framing, what does the employee believe to be true about this new role and about his or her ability to perform well and enjoy the new role? How will the employee reframe his or her identity? So if you remember, I asked you at the beginning to fill in I am, fill in the blank. What is the employee going to be saying? This is going to be a really important part of changing the identity. And then from an organizational standpoint, the organization absolutely must create a sense of urgency and provide a vision. So why is this employee being promoted? Why is this employee being promoted or the job being redesigned? Why is it needed now? What's the urgency around it? And what is the vision that the organization has for the employee first and the organization second as a result of the change? And that's important because employees always, like all of us, we're human, we want to know what's in it for us, and how are we going to benefit from it. Step number 2, the employees as agents of their own change need to develop some intrinsic motivators. And motivation is a skill that can be learned. What are the employees' values, interests, and attitudes about this new role, and how can they utilize them for success? And then on the organizational side, it is imperative that the manager, and you see that the manager is the bridge between this, how can the manager set clear roles, responsibilities, and expectations? What specifically, and when I say specifically, and Bob knows I really encourage you not to use weasel words, and be very specific on what does a new or hybrid role entail. So you got to be really clear with the employee what they are expected to do. What are their specific responsibilities, and what are the performance expectations? Now, the employee also will have some expectations, and those need to be taken into account. Step number 3, employees as agents of change. They're responsible for self-regulation. So if you look at, and I didn't go into a lot with this case study of my client who became spaghettified, but one of the hardest things for them was to give up the day-to-day engineering work. After all, she went to school to become an engineer. She loved to do engineering work. She was an expert in engineering, and that's what she wanted to do. And she continued to do engineering work, and at the expense of this new role as a leader and manager. So the employee must take responsibility for their self-regulation. It is crucial for transitioning. So the employee has to think about, because they know themselves better than anyone else, what are some techniques that they can utilize to stay in their new role? On the organizational side, they need to provide targeted training. So step number one with this, they must assess the individual's knowledge, skills, and abilities for peak performance in the new role. So then they have to provide either formal or on-the-job training to develop or advance these KSAs. So a general blanket training in management and leadership probably is not the thing to do, or in whatever the role is. I keep saying leadership and management because that's what I specialize in. Step number 4, the employee needs to set some short-term goals and rewards. What does the employee need or want to achieve in the short term? And how is he or she going to reward themselves? So that's important, just like if we go working out and we spend so much time and energy into working out, we want to reward ourselves in some way in the end. So what are those that the employee can set up? And then from an organizational standpoint, socialization. So if you remember at the beginning, we talked about how professional identity is developed. And one of the ways it's developed is through socialization, through hanging out with people who do whatever that profession is. Attending meetings, attending conferences, presenting at conferences, whatever is utilized for socialization. Now, the organization, because they have a person who's been moved into a new or hybrid role that could be in conflict with their identity, they must look at what immersion, mentoring, and coaching activities does the employee need to ensure that he or she begins to, quote, think, act, and feel like a professional in the new role. So this might be something that when you get into these activities, you really want to think about this socialization piece. That here's an old saying came to my mind, birds of a feather flock together. So, how can you get these employees that are in these newer hybrid roles flocking together with people who are experienced in this kind of role that the employee is now going to be in? And then step number 5 is persistence and resiliency on the employee's part. Change is hard. Change of any kind is hard, and it takes persistence and it takes resiliency. Megan, I know you can talk a lot on resiliency and what's needed. What does it take to have the mental toughness to persist in a new role that is in conflict with your professional identity? What's it going to take to really take you down? Or what's it going to take to get you standing up tall so that you are successful in that new role? So that's what the employee has to consider. And from the organizational standpoint, feedback, frequent feedback is very important. So what mechanisms can be put into place to provide that frequent and specific feedback on performance? Now, very important here is, what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities of the person providing the feedback? So if you have a manager who is going to be providing feedback to someone who has moved into a management role, well, you better make sure that that manager has the knowledge, skills, and abilities associated with effective management and leadership, else the feedback is probably not going to be the best. Now, that goes back then to, if you look at the manager at the bridge here in the middle, How did the manager get into that position, and what are their knowledge, skills, and abilities? And it goes back to my 12-step plan on a very long-term organizational plan to promote people into, in this case, leadership and management positions, but it can be used for any new role. So that's the 5-step process very quickly in a nutshell. So now we're going to break out into groups. You're going to have 15 minutes to design both a micro and macro intervention. You will have some instructions, and you will also have those 5 steps available to you. Just a warning, those 5 steps are in a infographic, so you may have to enlarge it to be able to see it well. And again, I'm not expecting you to really develop an implementable intervention, but this is really just to get you thinking about what's needed and see what you come up with. And let's get back together at about 12:45 and see what you come up with. And Matt, I think you're able to give them a 1-minute warning before their time is
This
up.
will actually be my first time doing a breakout group. So we're going to see, I'm doing 3 groups, and it will assign automatically, and I'll just hit create. And if for some reason I lose everyone, please jump back on, but I think we'll be okay.
And Matt, where will they find the link to the Google Drive so that they can have that for reference?
In the chat, you'll see it linked there. And then you'll see the Word document is actually the thing you'll want to open first. A couple scenarios in it, just choose one or make up your own. And then you'll basically use Nila's infographic to help try and come up with just a quick intervention. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about what we came up with in our groups. So here we go. We'll see everybody in about 15 minutes.
Thank you, Matt. Right, we're all back together now, and I'm really eager to hear what you came up with. So let's start with breakout group number 1. Who's the spokesperson for your group? Tell us in a couple of minutes what your intervention is and what you determined the person needed, and why you think your intervention will work. Is everybody back in?
I was in group 1. I think we're here. There's Jen, Kelly.
Yeah, I think we're all back.
I can go ahead since I don't know if we really successfully tackled our task, but I did post the question because I chose this workshop because I'm that person trying to figure out about my professional identity and where I am in my personal career and how I can use what I've learned in my EMOD program to achieve some of the things that I want to achieve personally and professionally here. And I started talking about with my group about how they chose their program, the doctoral program. The takeaway that I really got was that I have the Tanisha's. Oh, okay. Yes, that's it, Heather. Okay, I'm sorry. So the takeaway was that I could still use things here, lead where I am, and take advantage of different resources. And if I'm looking for more structure, what I could do. So I'm going to yield to the rest of the team because I'm sure they have a lot to contribute and say.
Okay, thank you, Tanisha.
Yeah, this is Heather. I'll jump in. We had a great opportunity. I'll say, we didn't use the prompts, but we used each other and where we're at, which I think is, even more helpful as far as being able to grab advice and life story when you're in it with others. So Tanisha was talking about how, she's done the executive program, interested in the doctorate. How can she start using, the methods kind of where she's at and to gain that influence and thought leadership. Kelly herself is using the doctorate program as a vehicle to really shift in away from a, engineering background into, a new world of OD and change, and where will that go? I myself have shifted, previously in a career. So anyway, just really took the opportunity to connect on what those experiences were and some of the things that we've done in order to make that, shift from one kind of expertise into a new area.
All right, Heather. So I'd ask the entire group together with what Tanisha and Heather have told us, what step were they using here?
It sounds like to me they were focused on step 4, like the goals and things that they wanted to achieve.
All right. Anyone else have some thoughts?
I actually think we were also looking at step 1 with intrinsic motivators, because Tanisha was really trying to say, here I am in the school system, and they're basically saying, hey, you have tenure, just stay in your class and do what you want to do, and having that time with her students and making a difference. But there also seems to be some of the intrinsic factors that are driving her, and even pointed out, some of the things that Dr. Katie had talked about with the achieving your joy and making that difference in the world. So I really think that some of that was there as well.
I think so too. Anyone else? I heard a lot of the socialization piece. We're talking to each other, we're learning from each other. Very good. Well, thank you, team 1. Good job. All right, team number 2. Let's hear from your spokesperson. Team number 2, are you on mute? Okay, we're not hearing. Matt, can you see what's going on that we can't hear from them?
I think they're just muted, but since we're short on time, maybe we'll just move to team number 3, which I believe was Herb and Megan.
Yes, we were team 3, and I don't know. Here, I'll turn my video on. You get to see sick Megan. I don't know if that was intentional or completely accidental that Herb and I were together, because we have such similar backgrounds. And we pretty much spent all of our time in step 1 for the employee on reframing identity, because we talked a lot about veterans transitioning from the military, as well as, police officers doing the same thing. They're very similar, very institutionalized organizations. And I can't say, and Herb can jump in, we decided we were going to tag team. We're going to be a team here because we struggle with the I and the individual aspect of things. It is definitely a struggle to reframe. It's not something that is talked about in those organizations. You don't talk about leaving these organizations. It's like Fight Club, even though it's going to happen at some point in time. So Herb, you want to jump in and add to what we talked about?
We really never got past step 1. We spent so much time talking about it, and it was such an interesting topic, and timely for me anyway. But we kind of discussed the fact that your identity is given to you in that military, paramilitary organization, so you never really had to think about it. So when you find yourself in that position where you do step away or walk away, you've never done that before. It's always been handed to you. So that is a challenge that I think a lot of people are unprepared for when they reach that. So yeah, so we never really got beyond step one. So I think we failed you, Nila.
Sorry, Nila. We need a few weeks.
Yes.
No, I don't think you failed at all, because the whole point, I know you couldn't design a complete intervention in 15 minutes. And the point is to bring awareness to the processes, both from a micro, the individual, the psychological side of it, and the organizational side. And the two of those really do need to work together. And this was a very short, really overview of the steps. If you all want to learn more about it, certainly contact me. I'm available and happy to help you. But the whole reframing piece, there's multiple steps that go into the reframing, and it's really has a lot to do with neuroplasticity and what we know about neuroplasticity and creating new neural pathways in the brain. So thank you for that. Did group number 3 become get on audio? I don't want to leave without giving them a chance.
I don't think we knew we were 3. Bob, it looks like you are ready to speak.
Yeah. We were group 2, and I guess one of our participants had to go, so I just see that. So yeah, I can talk on behalf of us. So I think we first of all, we took scenario 1, the school teacher and the principal job, and I think we talked about some assumptions, whether she was not given the opportunity to be successful, or she's just a square peg in a round hole. The two opposite side maybe assumptions. So we decided, we kind of looked at it from a let's get more information standpoint. So we would ask her for some feedback, do a kind of a 360 review of the situation, and find out if she was given facilitated to be successful, meaning coached and trained and socialized, so varying things to have more information before we developed a specific plan. But clearly, we needed to make sure that specific roles and responsibilities and expectations were identified, and what she wanted to get out of the job needed also to be identified, and then through that we could as managers bridge the gap and facilitate her success, or move on to another candidate if that was necessary.
Very good. Excellent. Well, very impressive. Thank you, Bob, and team too.
Carol and Daisy, yes.
Yes,
my teammates.
you all did an awesome job today, especially given the very, very short period of time. So we'll just wrap up for just a minute and look at what are your key takeaways from today. What's become more clear to you now that you have spent this time with us today, talking about professional identity and how it can derail a career? Maybe 1 or 2 people, and then we'll
Nila, I'll jump in here. I love the model that you have developed. I think if you talk to most people in this room, I mean, you've heard it, that some people say, I'm going through this right now. And if you're not going through it now, you've probably been through it, or you will go through it. Or a lot of us have been in the position where we have promoted people and then wondered why are they failing? What am I doing wrong? That's where I love your model. It is practical. It says, I can go through these steps and start diagnosing like where the issues, or you know what, I may not have time. I can call someone like you to come help me, walk through these steps, which would be awesome. But I love it. I love the thought you've put into it. I just think it's so practical and useful. It's not a high pie in the sky thing. It's right now and it's timely. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that, and you're welcome. Call me anytime. Anyone else have a key takeaway or something that's really become clear to you after this presentation?
I would say, the process takes work. It's not, promoting and changing roles and responsibilities. It's not plug and play. So it takes work on all around. If you know that going into it and you're willing to accept that and try to make it work, then you probably will be successful.
Absolutely, Bob. I agree. All right. Well, I thank all of you for being here today. I am honored that you came and you gave such good attention and you participated. I appreciate that very much. I hope that you have some great takeaways that you can take back into your lives, into your businesses, and put it into practice. So with that, Steve, I'm going to turn this back over to you.
Thanks, Nila. I think that, when we look at professional joy, but really the notion of thought leadership and how people are coming in to explore how they're going to position themselves. My identity metaphor is, are you a pickup truck? Are you a race car? Or are you a big SUV? Because based on what you pick and what you build your professional brand around in terms of your thought leadership and what you publish on and what you write about through our doctoral program, it begins to set up a persona publicly that hopefully is aligned with your identity that you agree with, that we agree with for ourselves. Because when that happens, when that alignment happens, that's a passion alignment.
Yes.
And that, I think, really sets the stage for resilience, joy, and all those kinds of things. So it's good. I love seeing everybody really taking away from the process, the practicality of the steps. That was great. And so thanks, everybody. It's been a good day. Have a good rest of your day today. And thank you again, Nila. So from BGSU, all things change. Have a great day.